This is the only figure who, these are the most studious, I feel, students who are in time and all. So, should we start then? What do you say?
Yes, ma'am, we can start.
Huh. Now, yesterday we made a beginning. I told you that we'll deviate a little and will not continuously go for the unit 1. But unit 2 also, because these topics are little relevant, I told you that we also have to cover up these things. Namely, 3 aspects I told you yesterday. We made a beginning in that direction. I said the 3 are: one, the corpus delicti, the other one is criminal profiling, and the third one being the modus operandi. Now, about corpus delicti and then the criminal profiling, I have dealt at large, at length rather. Then today I thought I'll just try to complete the modus operandi so that all these 3 aspects in unit 2 are also covered now. So, in order to understand what modus operandi is, we often hear that modus operandi is one concept, and then the investigating officers rely upon these modus operandi, and then there is a special wing in CID who will maintain this, and then in association with the CID, there is NCRB, SCRB, DCRB at district and state and national level. They also maintain a record of all the criminals by MO, criminals classified based on MO, they say. Modus operandi in short is called MO. Now, we need to, if that is the significance attached to modus operandi, it is but natural that as students of forensic science and as students of criminology, it is mandatory that we should also know what exactly modus operandi means and how it will be, what are the elements of this modus operandi, and then what is the utility of modus operandi analysis, how it is going to help the investigation, isn't it? Now, what are all the factors that influence the modus operandi, whether they are fortifying factors or whether they are destabilizing factors, what are these factors all about? And then when we talk about using this as a evidence, because after all, ultimately any case, when it comes to trial, it is the trier of the fact who will decide the fact of the case, isn't it? He is the one who is going to decide the fate of the case. In that case, it is for him to appreciate the evidence, and then he is the one who will decide whether a particular evidence need to be admitted or whether a particular evidence need to be disallowed. So this is what is exactly the scenario. And now there are other factors like how media is going to play in influencing the how they are projecting the modus operandi behaviors, whether towards the positive side or towards the negative side, and all that we are going to learn in this particular today's session. So, let us first try to understand what is the definition of modus operandi. Now, we all know that modus operandi is a Latin word. Now, it simply means the method or the manner or the strategy that a criminal is trying to adopt, and or the process or a combination of process the criminal is going to adopt. And why is he adopting this? He is exercising these concepts while committing the crime. So while committing the crime, he has got his own style. In common parlance, if you want to tell, he uses his own methodologies, isn't it? He is using his own strategies which he acquired over a period of time. So this trade of art he has acquired over a period of time because he has been indulging in the same kind of a profession over years. So he has evolved a kind of a strategy, some methodology or some manner, isn't it? So that he is successful in his attempt, isn't it? Now this is called all together. It can be manner, it can be a method, or it can be any procedure or any strategy which has been adopted by the criminal or the perpetrator in successfully accomplishing his task, namely here the commission of a crime. Now, not only this, whatever acts that he performs, and whatever choices that he makes, because not all criminals are alike. Though in the IPC, for burglary, for rape, for rioting, for robbery, for dacoity, we have clear-cut definitions. So when can we have a clear-cut definition? When the pattern of a crime is very similar, the ingredients, if they are very similar or same, then that facilitates us to go for a classification. If there is lot of diversification, we cannot go for any uniformity or classification. Now, the very fact that there is a kind of a common kind of what you call the ingredients, so that will facilitate us in forming a kind of a definition for that. Now, once we say crime is the same, situations are the same, but then why should criminals behave in different way? Why should they have their own strategies? Isn't it? Now, this is over a period of time, depending upon their acumen, their education background, their ease of operation and all, each one of them have evolved their own methodologies, isn't it? Now, that is the reason why there is no uniformity in commission of a crime, though the crime that they are committing is the same. That means what I mean to say is, same kind of a robbery, if done by two different people, two different robbers, it is not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. The reason is the method, the manner, the procedure in which the particular crime, namely robbery, if you take the example of that, is quite different. That is the reason modus operandi are different for the same kind of a crime. Even for the same kind of a crime, the pattern will be different. So that means what? By looking at the plan or the preparedness, or for that matter the method, we will be able to understand that this is the handiwork of so and so gang. Now, how gangsters are being identified, how terrorists are being identified, how we can say that this is the handiwork of a particular terror group or particular fanatic group, how are we able to predict this? This is because of modus operandi or the offender signature that they try to leave. There is slight difference between the offender signature and then the modus operandi. Now, modus operandi are the strategies or actions that are very essential. That means unless until he adopts these some basic modus operandi, there is no way that he can successfully commit the crime. But offender signatures, in addition to the essential acts that are required in accomplishing the task, there are other emotional related or behavioral related actions which are otherwise not necessary, which are otherwise not very essential in the commission of the crime. They will also be doing these things. Thereby, they leave their own signature, which is very, very specific to that particular offender individual. Now, this is a slight difference between what we call the offender signature and then the modus operandi. When coming back to modus operandi again, as I said, the manner or the process or the method in which a criminal perpetrates the crime is very, very unique, and then that is called the modus operandi. Now, it is not only the act, as I said, it is the different choices that he tries to adopt for the ease of operation. Those also collectively are called the modus operandi. Now, law enforcement officers, if you see, it's been held that the belief, the understanding, the methods and then techniques of the criminals which they use in committing crime is the best way to investigate, identify and ultimately apprehend them. So, the ease of investigating, ease of identifying, ultimately ease of apprehending a particular criminal becomes very easy for any law enforcement officers once they understand how and what technique and what method these people, criminals, are adopting in commission of the crime. So if they can master this, it will be easy for them to identify the groups or identify the perpetrators. Now, that is the reason why we say that the best detectives are the living encyclopedias. The best detectives, we can call them as living encyclopedias of all criminal cases and behaviors. So because over a long period, in their tenure, they must have seen a lot of criminals adopting a similar kind of a signature, adopting a similar kind of modus operandi. So once they know these behaviors, it is easy. They have all kind of information with them. So it is nothing but encyclopedia, we can call. Then they learn and then utilize this particular knowledge and experience of known criminals. See, known criminals, as we say, a fresh doctor versus the experienced old patient. So old patient most of the time is more knowledgeable than a fresh doctor. Similar is the case with detectives also. The known criminals, always they have a lot of experience of doing it, and every time they do the particular same kind of a crime, their skills improve, they update their skills, isn't it? And then they become little sophisticated, they learn the art of trade and all, so they become little smart. And from these people, whom we call often informants, isn't it? So informants, in that form, they will be good source for us to give cues or clues, isn't it? So we use their knowledge base to assist in investigation, and then of course in investigation, identifying, and ultimately the aim is to apprehend the criminals. So in all these aspects, we will be using the knowledge base of a known criminal or a professional criminal and making them into informers, and through them we will get to know all information, how a particular gang is going to commit the crime, what are their strategies, what are their manner, what are their methods to commit the crime and all. Now, and they will be learning these kind of strategies, what strategies they are adopting, so that they can improvise upon their own investigation. Now, what are the knowledge base of criminal methods? Criminal methods, if we can see, the investigative philosophy survives on at the international level also as one form or the other. Now, to name a particular system of modus operandi, there is one police officer. He has made a lot of efforts towards that. It is the spelling is ATCHERLEY, Atchley. It is T is silent. We should not pronounce. It is called Atchley. He is the one who tried to develop some kind of a modus operandi system, and he writes a book called Modus Operandi, Criminal Investigation and Detection. So this is the kind of book he writes, in which he documents a lot of strategies, and then he also recommends a lot of things in that book. Now, just to give a gist of all what he has written in the book, there are almost 10 points in that. Now, there are almost 10 points in that. He is trying to scrupulously jot down some points, document it properly, and then he tried to recommend the following things. So what will be there in the modus operandi system? Now, he says first thing is class word, CLASSWORD. So what exactly we mean by this? Now, this is the nearest possible description of a victim. So if you have to describe a victim, what is that you have to do? What kind of word should go to describe that? Now, he says description can be of a person, or it can be description of a property. Now, both these can be attacked, because when we say property offences, it is mostly the property that is being attacked, isn't it? When you say bodily offence, it is the victim or the person who is going to be attacked. Now, so if it is a person, if it is an offence relating to the body of the person, then he says what occupation. Now, if it is a premises, then what specific kind of a premises it is. Now, that is about the class word. I mean, the offences can be divided into property and then the person. Then in that case, if it is a person, then he says occupation, and if it is a premises, then he says what specific kind of premises it is. Now, second point which he harps upon, which plays important role in understanding the modus operandi, is the entry. Now, each criminal, especially when we talk of property offences, first he will select a point of entry. So, point of entry in most of the times, it can be a breaking and entering kind of a thing, or opening the lock with a duplicate key and entering, or forcible entry. So, what exactly is the entry point that we need to establish? And modus operandi is very typical in entry, in selecting the entry point. Each criminal has got his own modus operandi when it comes to identifying the entry point. So, what do we mean by entry point? It is the actual point of entry to the property where the crime has occurred. So, whenever a crime has occurred, maybe if it is a dwelling, a residential dwelling, or if it is a hospital, or if it is a bank, then each has got its own security thing. So guards will be there guarding the entire premises and all. So maybe one kind of a gang of criminals, what they do is they will try to do this kind of a recce the previous day, and then try to understand at what particular time the premises is unguarded, or at what particular time there will be a change in shift of the security guards. So, or at what time the bank vehicle will leave with the currency to the headquarters, or headquarters which is located in a different place. So, they will make a recce the previous day, they will understand the workflow of the bank, and accordingly they will also target such banks which are isolated, which are located in the outskirts of the city. So this is a kind of a recce that they try to make to understand how to, and they also don't mind doing a dry trial. That means before the actual commission of the crime, they also go for a trial. So this will be, to understand the entry point, how guarded it is, and then where the property is located and where the crime is located, how to enter into the premises and all. So they will select the actual entry point. Now, there has to be some means in order to approach that particular point, and then there should be some method, some way. So this is means we mean the actual method of entry. That means how did they get into the point of entry? What kind of tools did they use? That means, if suppose it is at a different, at a higher level, where a glass window is there. Now they may have to break that glass window which is not reachable otherwise. So what are the means that they are trying to reach that particular window pane? It may be a ladder, it may be an adjacent property, it may be a rope, it may be a key, or it may be any tool like crowbar. So what is the means which they are using in order to reach that particular entry point is called means. Now, the fourth point he harps upon the object. Now, what do we mean by object? Object is nothing but the intent of the crime, motive there. So, no crime will happen without any motive or without any intent. So, when we say object, it indicates the motive or the intent of the crime and the intended target. So, there must be intended target. Intended target can be, in case of robberies, it is the property. Intended target in case of offences against the people, it is the persons who are going to be attacked. Now, that is the object of the crime. Now, the fifth point what he says is time. Now, what is the actual time of the offence? What is the actual time of the offence? Not just the hours it occurred, but during which period of time? Is it the weekend or the some hours or specific hours? So that is what is important. Each one has got their own typical way of selecting the time also. So that is the reason why modus operandi, if you want to understand, you also have to look into the time factor. Now the next factor is style. So what do you understand by the style? This is nothing but the actual or pretended occupation of the offender during the offence. So what kind of a trade or occupation he is trying to adopt? Not to be confused with the offender's or non-criminal trade, that is style and trade may be the same for opportunistic offenders, but then the style is presumed identity or occupation. Sometimes it is the offender's actual identity or occupation, and sometimes it is entirely fabricated. So this is about style. And then the tail. So what is the alibi that he has got? Suppose if he is going to make some statement to cover up their tracks, now what kind of alibi he is normally trying to adopt is called the tail. And then eighth point he says is Paul, P-A-L. Paul is like a friend, So some crimes normally are accompanied by accomplices, isn't it? So what is the nature and role of this kind of a Paul in the entire commission of the crime is also one thing we need to remember. Now, transport, because any criminal, if he does a criminal act, he has to be aware of two things. One is the quickest possible time at his disposal, he should be able to accomplish his task, number one. And this particular task he should achieve without being noticed by anybody. So if somebody identifies him, somebody apprehends him, or somebody notices him, there is every likelihood that he'll be apprehended, or at least he'll be chased by, isn't it? So for that reason, time becomes very, very crucial for them. And then within that time factor, limited time, he should successfully accomplish his task. For that reason, normally these days, modern days, the criminals are not coming barefooted. So they are trying to adopt some kind of a vehicle. So it may be to carry the booty, or it may be to reach the destination quickly, or maybe in the process, if somebody dies, or if it is if it is a crime related to the person or bodily offense, maybe after killing the body, they may try to dispose of the body. They may wish to dispose of the body or throw the body in some areas, outskirts, where there is nobody coming to that place, so that the crime goes unnoticed, isn't it? So that kind of strategies, if they want to adopt, definitely they should have some transport, isn't it? Some transport. And these days, criminals coming by foot and all, because they are also, criminals these days are also rich criminals, unlike old traditional times where they are very poor and they have a typical attire, typical dress and all. I mean, these things have become little obsolete now. So they also have lot of means to reach the crime scene, and then they use four-wheelers, two-wheelers and all, This is or some public transport in the guise of a good citizen, and also they may take the public transportation also. Now, ninth point is talking about the transport aspect. Now that is the means with which the offender arrived at the scene, and after committing the crime, how is he departing from the scene. So for both the things, transport is required. Why transport do you think in case of robbery is required? Because they need to carry their tools in order to make a forcible entry. Like for example, in some of the banks, they have used this acetylene flame, oxyacetylene flame. So oxyacetylene flame can easily melt the glass or some metal doors with high temperature. So their forcible entry is not heard by anybody else. The noise that comes out of forcible entry, nobody will hear, isn't it? If they are using high temperature flames, oxyacetylene flames, so it will not be noted by anybody. So the strategy that is adopted by criminals or robbers or highly professional criminals is changing every day. Now the trademark. So what do you understand by trademark? Last point being the trademark. Now it only says it is an extraordinary act or acts not associated with the object of the crime. Say for example, there are some essential acts, crucial acts, without which the criminal cannot accomplish successfully his task. So they are there anyway, they are compulsory, they are mandatory. But then apart from that, there are some unusual kind of extraordinary acts. At times, some criminals at least, they are fond of doing this. So they are not part and parcel of the essential acts that ought to be done by the criminal. So what are those kind of trademarks? Sleeping in a bed. Suppose he is feeling so thirsty, eating food or some eatable, if that is there available, they try to eat it, and then destroy the clothing and then furniture. So they don't mind shaving for a very long period if they feel that they have beard, and then to go undetected, maybe to conceal his own identity, he may shave, he may cleanly shave and then come back. So these are some kind of extraordinary or rather unusual kind of acts on the part of the perpetrator, which otherwise also are living as a trademark, isn't it? So this will be there in the scene, and they are also important when we talk of the modus operandi system. So is the actually is the person, or rather the scientist, who tries to give the modus operandi system, and then in his book called the Modus Operandi Criminal Investigation and Detection, in that book he strongly recommends, and then he also tries to document lot of points which he says need to be observed, which will help in understanding what you call the modus operandi. As many as 10, that each one of them we have already discussed. Now there are, after actually there are so many others also, like Warmer, VOLLMER. He is also one of the propounder from again police department. He also tries to improvise upon this, and then he says professional criminals who are otherwise migratory. So there is a need, he feels that the system, existing system, should again systematically be classified, and it has to be organized. So he tries to improvise upon that. So like that, the current modus operandi also has it's not static, it is dynamic, it is every day it is evolving. Now what is the utility after making all these, observing modus operandi and then documenting it, formulating it? Now ultimately what are the uses of this modus operandi? You are analyzing these modus operandi for what purpose, what is their utility? If you try to understand the utility of this modus operandi, now the criminals modus operandi, if you try to understand them, I said they are made up of the choices that the perpetrator is going to make, and their own behaviors in the commission of the or in the accomplishment of the crime. So these are collectively, we said, are the modus operandi that has been adopted by the criminal. Now the there are, as I said, there are extraordinary or a kind of an unusual behaviors at times. They are also expressed, and they are not part and parcel of the what you call the modus operandi. But then, however, they are also important. So when we talk of offender signature, modus operandi, slightly they differ, as I have already told in the beginning. So modus operandi are essential acts, as I said, to or in legal parlance we can say mandatory acts on the part of the criminal, now to accomplish the crime. Now in addition, there are extraordinary things which are relating to his psychology and emotion and other behaviors. So as a part of that, he is also leaving those things as modus operandi. So collectively we call these extraordinary behavior and then the normal behavior which are required for modus operandi. Both together will constitute what is known as an offender signature. Now, if you have to understand the utility of this modus operandi analysis, in what areas it will be useful. Now, as a part of investigation, we need to do, the law investigating officers are supposed to link things, especially when we talk of unsolved cases. The modus operandi is going to play a tremendous role. So it helps in linkaging, because similar type of signatures or similar type of embos are being observed. Now the criminal is at large, he is not traceable. So in that case, if the in series of crimes that has been committed by a person, if you feel the signatures are the same or the modus operandi are the same, then you can at least say they can be linked up. So that is how it helps in linking, investigative linkages in most of the unsolved crimes is one of the utility. Now, the other utility as far as MO analysis is concerned, we can say suspect identification by comparing known criminal modus operandi with the modus operandi that is available in the unsolved cases. There are series of, let us say, unsolved cases, and then you have now suddenly one suspect turning out to be a known criminal because his modus operandi is known. Now what all that you have to do is, now you know the modus operandi of this known criminal, and you have unsolved cases where there are similar kind of modus operandi evidences. All that you need to do is, now you try to compare these two, and that will help in identification of the suspect involved. Now there is another utility for modus operandi analysis, that is routine comparison of arrestee modus operandi with the modus operandi evidence of the unsolved cases. So the utility, if you see the modus operandi, it lies only with the unsolved or unresolved cases. So here also, if you arrest somebody, now he has got a typical kind of a modus operandi, and there are a set of unsolved modus operandi also. సార్ మీరు వచ్చి కొంచెం ఇది చెయ్యాలి, లేకుంటే మాటికి అడ్మిట్ నాకు ట్రాక్ పోతుంది, చెయ్యాలి ఇది. సో పీపుల్ కీప్ ఆన్ జాయినింగ్, అండ్ ఐ లూజ్ ఎ ట్రాక్ ఆఫ్ వాట్ ఐఎమ్ సేయింగ్. సో యూ షుడ్ ఆల్ జాయిన్ ఇన్ టైమ్. హౌ మెనీ టైమ్స్ షుడ్ ఐ టెల్? Because I have to do the double duty. I mean, address you also, and then at the same time admit you also. So anyway, so we are trying to discuss what are the utilities of this modus operandi. There are many utilities, and then all utilities you can see they are used for unsolved or unresolved kinds of cases. Maybe in one case we talk about linking the investigation. Then in other case we say it helps us in identifying the suspects, potential suspects, because suspect we know the modus operandi, and unresolved or unsolved case also we know that there are typical modus operandi available. All that one needs to do is compare and contrast these two kinds of modus operandi, and then thereby fix the identity of the suspect. Now even in case of arrestees also, we know the person who is the arrestee, we know his modus operandi, and we also have modus operandi available in the unresolved. Unresolved means unsolved, perpetrator is not known. What we mean by unsolved or unresolved cases is perpetrator is not known. Now you have somebody arrested, and you have a typical modus operandi of him. Now you know the modus operandi of that arrestee person, and you also know the modus operandi evidence that is available in the unresolved case also. So you again have to compare these two, and then say whether he is the same person who is arrested in another case, is the same one who also have perpetrated, or who is the expected kind of a criminal in all the unresolved cases also. So that way, by comparing the routine arrestees also, we can apply that to the unsolved cases, and then try to resolve the cases. Now the investigative leads, we said investigative linkages. Not only that, the modus operandi also helps us in understanding or giving lot of investigative leads, and that is also possible in unsolved cases or unresolved cases. Now apart from these listed kind of utilities that we have for the MO analysis, there are also some criminal choices, some procedures, or some techniques which are characteristics can also reflect some of the points which we are going to now discuss. That is a particular discipline, or maybe a trade, or maybe a skill, or maybe a profession, or area of knowledge, criminal and non-criminal kind of a thing. Knowledge which is particular to the victim, suggesting surveillance, isn't it? Contact or prior relationship with her, or absence of these things. And another knowledge base particular to a crime scene itself, suggesting surveillance, contact, or intimate familiarity with this, or absence of that. So these are some of the reflections that we can have on MO analysis. Now when it comes to elements of the modus operandi, we have to understand that the offender's MO behavior is a function, it is more of a function, it has a lot of utility or function. So when we talk of offender's behavior, it has lot of thing to do with the nature of the crime. So the function in nature, we say it is functional in nature. Now, because any behavior, as we know, is as per psychology, is a learned behavior, isn't it? So also the criminal behavior. So criminal behavior is also learned behavior. Now, it can evolve and develop over time. It will not remain the same. As he keeps on educating himself, as he keeps on doing the same kind of offense again and again, crime again and again, he is going to become little sophisticated. Every time he does it, that next time when he does the same thing, he is little sophisticated in his own doing. And the more perfectly he does, the more confidence he gains. So in the process, he'll also become very confident, and also becomes less. It can be the other way also. So there may be some less competency, and then whatever skill that he has acquired over a period of, there can be some decompensating values also, deterioration also, either of the physical stamina or maybe the mental state. So there may be two ways possible. So the behaviors most often, they serve one or more of the general purposes. There are some general purposes which are there for these behaviors. What are those general behaviors? Now, there are as many as three kind of behaviors that he tries to list out. What are those? Protection of offender's identity. So, what do they do? Most of the offenders, they want their identity not to be revealed. If he is going to be, if his identity is going to be revealed, he can be apprehended very easily. So what he does is, as far as possible, he tries to conceal his own identity by adopting several methods. So what are those methods that he is adopting to protect his own identity? That is, example, you can see wearing a mask during a daytime bank robbery. Because daytime there is a lot of enough light, so anybody or this the customers or this security people, they can easily identify the person. So if they want to do a daytime robbery, the best way is to conceal their identity. How do they do that? How is this protection of offender identity is achieved? By wearing mask. Different kinds of masks they wear, and then that will help them in not revealing their identity. Or the best way is for each offense, the kind of protection that the offender adopts is different. For example, in one offense he will use mask for his own protection of identity. In other crimes like sexual assaults and all, what he does is, now he may like to cover the victim's face or eyes during the rape, isn't it? Now that is how these are the strategies which the criminal will be adopting in protecting the identity, either identity of himself or maybe the identity of the victim. So that if the victim's eyes are closed or if her face is covered, then there is no way that she can, if she is going to survive. It is a matter of, again, identity problem. So if she identifies me, so the best way is cover her own face, eyes, and then do the sexual offense, so that future day she will not be able to identify the perpetrator. Or maybe wearing gloves. So burglary, because you need to touch upon all surfaces, so if you touch surfaces, definitely because of sweat and all, you are going to leave prints. So he knows this pretty well. So what he does is, let me not touch anything barehanded, so let me as well wear gloves. So more than the scientists, these burglars, they are becoming more sophisticated, more intelligent and more prudent. So they do these kind of burglaries these days by wearing gloves also. So that is, in order to ensure a proper protection for identity, he does these kind of tricky modus operandi. Now, successful completion of the crime. So at the same time, he has to ensure that his identity should not be revealed, but at the same time, as I said, the quickest possible time, within the quickest possible time which is there which is at his disposal, he should also successfully complete the task and then leave the premises, isn't it? So successful completion of the crime is also very, very important when we talk of elements of modus operandi. What is the example that we can give? Targeting and acquiring the victim, isn't it? using a gag to silence the victim. So if a unknown person enters the premises, naturally the victim will make hue and cry, isn't it? So in order to avoid any voice raised by the victim, what he does is he uses all criminal gags. He puts some cotton gag or some cloth into her mouth, or he may tape her mouth and also that even if she shouts that nobody will hear her voice. That is one strategy. Or using a weapon to control the victim. So victim is, it is after all his or her own hard-earned money. Why will somebody tolerate if an unknown person coming and trying to loot everything in their own hard-earned wealth and hard-earned money and all? So they will definitely try to resist, So if the robber or the offender doesn't have any weapon in his control, as the very definition of extortion, robbery, we have seen that in order to in order to threaten the victim, he has to use some kind of a force, isn't it? So some force he has to use to dispossess that victim. So in the process, he may use a weapon, and such a weapon, looking at the weapon, the victim should be little afraid. He will be under the emotion of fear. So what if I lose my life? It is better I part with this property rather than lose my life. So when weapon is there, this is one kind of a external force that the perpetrator can use to threaten the victim, so that they can, without any resistance, the victim can part with whatever property he is aiming at. Now, this is another way, general kind of a modus operandi. And the third point he says is facilitation of offender escape. See, for quickly committing the crime and for concealing his own identity, he has taken precaution. What if he has to also ensure quick escape from the place, isn't it? He has to evolve some strategy of quickly leaving as soon as he completes the task, he should also be leaving the scene, leaving the premises. So if he doesn't do this, if he delays there, then there is every possibility maybe that some neighbor may come and then enter the premises, or some passerby may notice his identity. So for that, there should also be some facility for the offender to escape. So what is that? Example you can say is use of stolen vehicle. See, most of the time he is a habitual offender. So why will he purchase a vehicle, नया गाड़ी एक crime के लिए एक time पे? Why will he buy a new car? So even that car or the transportation what he uses to reach or to depart from the crime scene, he will be stealing somebody's car only, isn't it? So the stolen car or stolen vehicle he uses during the commission of a crime, and disposal of vehicle after the commission of a crime. So, or maybe he wants to dispose only for that purpose, he wants to steal the vehicle, and then later on he wants to dispose it off, so that because the moment somebody's owner's vehicle is stolen, he will not keep quiet. Owner goes to the police station, he also lodges a complaint. So and the property offences, police are very, very active. So what they do is they also start the investigation early, and then in their chase to identify the criminal. So if the vehicle is there, and if he doesn't quickly change the number, nameplate and all, he will easily be apprehended, isn't it? Now for that reason, only for one purpose, if he is going to steal the vehicle, as soon as the task gets accomplished, he wants to discard that particular vehicle, isn't it? Now, to prevent their escape and then hamper their attempt to get help. So other thing is not only the vehicle, but then in the crime scene, most of the time the victim, if they are smart, as I said, they go for retaliation, or they go for resistance. So in the process, if their hands are free, maybe they will try to attack, isn't it? So what they try to do is they tie up the hands of this victim, so that her movement is little restricted and all. Now, or they may kick the victim or give some blow, so that the the victim becomes unconscious or become motionless and all. So this kind of facilitations will be adopted by the offender for his escape. Now, apart from this, there are some general elements that are also commonly observed, which are very, very characteristic features that are amply available in the crime scene. Now, there is a number of such general elements that you still find in the crime scene. To list a few of them now, how many number of offenders? Normally in bank robberies kind of a thing, now you see that it is a gang that comes. So how many offenders are there, how many perpetrators are there in that particular offense becomes a little important. Now, amount of planning before a crime. So each crime, as we know, there are different stages. You need to prepare for that crime, you need to buy certain essentials for that crime, and then you also do a lot of recce of the previous day to understand the workflow of that particular premises and all, you know. So for all these you require a lot of planning for that. So how much time exactly has gone to such kind of a preparation or planning before they actually commit the crime is also one general element which is important when you talk of MO or the modus operandi. Now, the offense location, in selecting the offense location also, the MO plays an important role. Now, the route taken to offense location. Now, there may be 2-3 routes. Now, he has to select such a route which is the shortest, though little rough and all, though not very, a route which is been adopted by others. He has to ensure that, some other a different way, a different route. If there are 2-3 routes, which will be the easiest way, which will be the shortest route which I can adopt. So he tries to adopt that particular route. And the victim selection. Victim selection also is important. Now, there are pre-offense surveillance, as I told you, of the crime scene or the victim. So as far as the victim is concerned, rape case and all, how frequent she goes all alone in the street, and then what are all the places she visits normally, or what are all the institutions she visits, what is her daily activity and all. So people would like to keep a watch on that, so that they know at what time she will become more vulnerable. So they select that kind of a time. So this is pre-offense surveillance. It can be recce of the crime scene, or it can be understanding the routine of the victim. Now, involvement of a victim during the crime, so non-fantasy related. Then use of weapons during crime. So what kind of weapon he is using? Is it a pistol, or is it again most of the time it is the pistol and other things, they are stolen only, because nobody will give you license on flimsy grounds, isn't it? So there has to be some valid ground for anybody to get a licensed firearm. So most of the time they don't get these licensed versions. The best way is to steal one, so which has got a license. So they will do that, and in the process what is the kind of weapon that they are using becomes very, very important. Now, what are the means of restraints that are the methods that he is trying to adopt to control the victim during the crime? So as we said, victim also makes his or her own attempts to ward off the criminal. So in the process, what are all the methods or means the perpetrator is using in order to ward off the victim? So he puts some restraint, like tying up her hands, or tying her legs, and all these kind of restraints will be there on the victim. So what methods he is using to restrain the victim also becomes important now. Then nature and extent of injuries to the victim, isn't it? See, you have seen, for everything I am taking the example because that is the latest current thing happening. So in that case, you know that the injuries that are there on the body of that lady doctor are very atypical, isn't it? They are not very typical. Why should they pierce her eyes? Why should they harm her in all body parts? And why should they stretch her legs so apart and all? These are all something which is very typical, we should say, very, very, very signature leaving and all. So that means the kind of injuries, the kind of wounds that the perpetrator is going to make on the victim, especially when it is a body offense or especially when it is a rape come murder, so they also become very important. And nature and extent, both, where what is the place selected and what is the nature of weapon used, both are very important. Method of killing the victim, that means either by throttling or gagging or closing the external orifices. So what is the mode, how they have killed the victim. Now what are the precautionary acts as an abundant precaution, what are the extraordinary acts that he is performing, that also becomes a typical modus operandi. Now what type of the victim clothing, what is the pattern there, whether she was made half naked or entire clothing have been removed or only the internal garments or inner garments are removed. So what is the status of the clothing of the victim also becomes very, very important. Now how the body is located, whether it is dumped or whether it is been properly clothed, or how it is disposed of, or was it lying at the same place, or whether some dragging of the body has taken place. All these things also become very, very location, position of the not only clothing of the victim but also the body of the victim herself is also very important. Now what are all the items that are taken from the victim or from the crime scene? If suppose the person, like there were some typical cases which were reported in and around Andhra Pradesh, especially in the pilgrim center Tirupati, sometime by some years back, there was a typical kind of a thief who is a serious kind of a rapist come murderer. So what he used to do is he used to live a very typical kind of a modus operandi in all his crimes. Now his target group was only ladies, and that too these ladies are all alone, and they are the people who are living in the rural scenarios. And then that too during in the rural scenario, most of the time during summer and all, people don't prefer, because they don't have this facility of current and all, they prefer sleeping outside on some cot and all. So he will choose such type of helpless and then vulnerable ladies. And then you will be surprised to notice that the typical modus operandi that he will be adopting, we cannot even call him as a professional thief or a professional robber. So when he attacks the victim, the method by which he attacks the victim is very, very typical. He carries with him a kind of a screwdriver. Now once he identifies the target, what he does is he takes away if she is a married lady, he tries to take away the Mangalsutra, or if she is an unmarried lady, then he will definitely rape her. So this is his typical kind of committing the crime. And not only that, he will also enjoy the sadistic pleasure out of the pain and agony exhibited by the victim. So he slowly drills the screwdriver inside the temporal region of the victim, and then he enjoys blood oozing out of the injury. So this is a very typical kind of a modus operandi that is been observed. And after committing a series of rape cum murders, then in one particular case somebody saw him, there was eyewitness for that, and in that case there was some fingerprints also available. So in the fingerprint bureau they could match the fingerprints, and then they say it is the same serial kind of a very, very dangerous criminal. And then they identified the criminal. Of course, on public hue and cry, there was pressure built up on the investigating team. Ultimately, whatever has to happen, that has happened. He was encountered, and then police say that he was trying to run away, and then we tried to shoot at him on non-vital parts, but then it so happened one of the shot went into his vital organ, and ultimately he died. And all is this because there is a public approval also there. There was hue and cry, if you don't kill him, we only take law into our hand, and then we try to finish him off. This kind of uproar was there in the public. So ultimately that fellow was killed in the process. I mean, in the name of encounter, of course. Now, like that, there are some typical cases. Now, we said the items taken from the victim, and then whatever items that are there from the crime scene, they will take away those, or may leave some typical items of his own personal things there also, isn't it? Now, the other methods of transportation, this we have already discussed, what kind of transportation he is using to flee away from the scene after accomplishing the task and all. And now there are again the same route which he adopts for reaching the crime scene may not be the same for leaving. So he may adopt something, a different route altogether. Like point of entry and point of exit are going to be different. Similarly, the route which he adopts for reaching the crime scene may be typically different from the route which he tries to adopt for leaving the crime scene. So that is also very, very, what is the direction and route or the path which he is trying to adopt in case of what you call the leaving or reaching the crime scene is also very, very important. Now, after understanding all these general elements that compose the material, the modus operandi, then we move on to the influences on the modus operandi. So, what do we understand by influences on modus operandi? So, we know that offender's modus operandi is nothing but the behavior that he has learnt, and by extension, they are dynamic. That means they are no more static, they are going to change, they are dynamic, and they are malleable. So they keep on, so plastic in nature, they keep changing and all. Now, this is because why the modus operandi actually graduates, why it evolves, because modus operandi is affected by time, isn't it? And it can also change as the offender learns or deteriorates. There may be learning for betterment, or maybe or if he is in the habit of using some drugs of abuse, or if he has got some mental derailment, then these abilities are going to dwindle, isn't it? Now, there are accordingly how these factors are going to influence the modus operandi. Then we have two categories of factors. Either they affect and enhance the caliber or ability of the person, or they may deteriorate, or they may hamper the abilities of the person. Thereby the modus operandi is also going to be different. So these fortifying factors and then the destabilizing factors, I think we will learn in tomorrow's class. For today, that's all for discussion, and probably for tomorrow I'll tell you probably the same time, or if there is any variation in timing, I'll just inform you. So we'll leave the meeting for today.
Thank you, ma'am.
So because every day I am not asking for feedback, I hope you are able to understand. In case of any difficulty in understanding, please you have to stop me then and there and ask. Otherwise I keep on going presuming that all of you have understood, because there is nobody responding and there is no way that I can understand these things. So
Ma'am, we have asked about PPD and some other materials.
PPT will be shared. That's for criminal theories.
From your Telegram channel or your Telegram.
No, I'll share. Leave Telegram group. Don't bother about Telegram group. I've told you that I'll prepare some PowerPoint for criminal behavior also.